Hello, I'm Patrick.
And I'm Lucinda.
And welcome to the Hollis Morgan March Auction Summary.
There were 45 lots on offer today for buyers' competition, and we successfully sold just shy of £6 million worth of land and property.
And a really good number of those were sold prior to the auction as well, weren't they? Which is something we want to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if a seller has a legal pack in advance, so if they instruct their solicitor to prepare everything well ahead of the auction, it just puts them in really good stead. It means that then if a buyer were to come forward prior to the auction, they could submit a pre-auction offer, and if the seller's happy with that level, they could sell prior to the auction, but still on auction terms. So a lot of our sellers were committed to do that, and I think they got some great results.
And I think, as you said, it's really key, that legal pack, isn't it? Because that legal pack's coming in maybe the last few days before registration, doesn't really leave enough time. You know, whilst we have secured sales that way, doesn't really leave enough time for that pre-auction offer.
Yeah, we set a deadline with the solicitors well in advance so that it gives buyers enough time to be able to do their due diligence before registering to bid. Sometimes, you know, if the solicitors do take a little bit longer to get all the documentation together, it just sort of limits the number of interested parties that will actually then compete in the sale. Just like as Pat said, if you haven't got, you know, enough time to review everything ahead of the auction and get themselves organised, they're less likely to bid. So I think, yeah, key, if you can get that legal pack in prior to the sale and leaving enough time for interested parties to review it, then you should, if you can be presented with some pre-auction offers beforehand that can proceed on auction terms, why wouldn't you entertain an offer prior?
Should we talk about some of the lots?
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you want to start? Lot one?
Yeah, lot one, Thirlwell Park. That had a fantastic result, didn't it?
It did have a good result. And there were lots of interested parties in there looking at the property for various reasons. Ones across that road have sold for really, really strong money in the past. So I think this was a perfect opportunity for an investor or DIY enthusiast to get involved. And it went for a really, really good figure. So I know the clients are very pleased with the result.
Good. And I think that was a really good show of, you know, the auction processing movement, wasn't it? We had, you know, multiple bids happening all at the same time online.
Various telephone bidders all shouting to try and get involved.
That's it. I think we had loads of telephone bids open and then proxy bids as well. So everyone in the mix. Ollie had a lot of work to do there, didn't he?
He did.
So that was very exciting. And then Nag's Head Hill as well, I think.
That's another good one that was, there was lots of buyers really, really competing to try and get that. And 374. Strong money.
Strong money. I think those two put together, they really do show that the auction strategy does work really well when there's enough people.
And especially for a residential property where, you know, normally a seller would want to instruct a private treaty or residential agent. I think it just goes to show that actually if you can guide it at a reasonable price that makes it look really attractive online, you will get lots of interest from various buyers and ultimately achieving a very good price.
A very good price.
A very good price.
From a land perspective, we had the lot at Oldland Common on North Street.
Yeah.
I think that's another good single plot, you know, building plot for a detached cottage.
Yeah.
We've had a string of those over the last few months, haven't we? And that also sold really well. So I think that's another show that those single plots are really of interest to the small builders out there. Especially
for the parties that missed out on lots like that. I think if you do have a plot that you're splitting, you know, thinking of splitting the title or going to get planning. I mean, Pat's your man here to give you some advice on that. But I think I know for certain that we've got lots of buyers that have missed out on this sort of opportunity. So definitely get in touch. So what's going on with the world right now, Pat, and what impact is that having on the market?
Well, I think, you know, with everything that's happening in the Middle East at the moment, you know, I think we were on a fairly steady run, weren't we, potentially? I think the government were about to announce that they'd reduced the deficit and the budget was going to be better in their spring statement just a couple of weeks ago. And then in the same week, we have catastrophe in the Middle East. So in terms of where that goes, it's hard to say. I do think we've got a bumpy road ahead. You know, I think we've got potential inflation, potential interest rates not reducing as much as we hoped.
Or they might just plateau for a little while longer.
That's it, yeah. And I think also rising gas price, where oil prices, will have an impact on build costs,
Yeah.
for example. So I think from a land perspective, I don't think we've got land prices rising anytime soon, let's just say that. So I think we'll continue with that trend for a while.
Not out of the woods yet.
Not out the woods just yet.
But there's still lots of motivated sellers out there and still lots of buyers that are actively seeking property, land and development.
Totally right. I think from a development standpoint, I think there's a lot of buyers out there still. So, people with money who are qualified, who are ready to go. So if you've got a plot to sell, despite everything that's happening in the world and all the noise, it's still a very good time to be putting your property on the market, either for private treaty or indeed for auction.
And what better way to do that than get in touch with the Hollis Morgan team, and we'd be happy to help.